All right. Hey guys, how's it going? Brief preamble here. We gave very short notice on the stream, or on the Discord, and gave no notice on my own channel. So I'll wait for a couple people to pour in here. I'm enjoying a nice, what is this? This is a Rwandan natural process coffee from Onyx, of course. It's a Kanzu Station Natural. Really good. Yeah, really nice. The apricot notes is the first tasting note they give. I get lots of that. Balances for video games and acrobats. Well, that's why I thought this was going to be a topic on video games because Josh Sawyer, of course, probably most famous for Fallout New Vegas, which is a game I love. But he actually immediately starts talking about Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm excited to get into that. Let me present that one. Let me know if the audio is good. I know every technology always wants to change audio balance. Let's see. All right, here we go. So I skipped the first couple minutes because it's effectively just talking about a video that Tim Kaine did. And for card games, yeah, anything that's competitive, right? But even then, awesome, thank you. Even in card games, though, there's an old classic article by Morrow of Wizards of the Coast, when good cards go bad, which is why you need bad cards in a card game. And he gives a few reasons, and I would love to go over that because one of the biggest reasons I think is for the underdog, right? So that you can have fun looking at a card that is bad, still win with it, and then have those moments of, oh my God, how did you lose to that of all things? This guy lost to, mono red goblins, 15 years ago when that was kind of a joke and not insane, right? Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to talk about, Grognar guy, is that there's a line somewhere between, specifically in RPGs, tabletop RPGs, or single player video game RPGs for that matter, between the choices being so obviously bad as to be like, well, here at level 2, you can pick deal 1d6 more damage with maces, or you can be immortal. It's like, oh, okay, that doesn't seem very balanced. That type of balance, right, on the obvious egregious side of things, yeah, you don't. I would like the game to be balanced to some degree at that point, but there's some nuance, and I think game developers can be a little heavy-handed trying to tweak every individual little thing to the point that in the search of balance, they make the world unbelievable. So let's find out what Josh Sawyer has to say here. I haven't watched the whole video, but I got about 5 minutes in. So let's go. Let me know if he's too loud as well.
And one of my favorite recurring things in The Onion is point, counterpoint. And I remember one that was these two college guys, probably arguably about my age at the time. And one of them was saying, Reservoir Dogs is the greatest movie of all time. And the counterpoint was Reservoir Dogs is fucking awesome. And basically these two guys don't actually realize that they both love Reservoir Dogs. And they're saying it in very slightly different ways. Not really, basically the same thing, but they don't realize it. I mean, that's how I think about balance and fun, is that there are different ways to go about achieving, I think, a similar end. Hopefully, and the player doesn't care. The player doesn't care how you went about doing the thing. They care about how it feels.
I would caveat that with when it's successful. If it's unsuccessful, I absolutely start looking at, oh, fuck, this is so unbalanced, or this is so boring. It doesn't matter what option I choose. A really great example of a very well-balanced game. as compared to the previous entries in the series, Skyrim, like, way more balanced than Oblivion, way more balanced than Morrowind, and on most levels a worse game because of that, because it just becomes, oh, do I want to pick the blue raspberry spell or do I want to pick the strawberry flavored spell? They both do the same thing. They both do damage. You know, you're not caring that electricity takes away magicka because they're dead by the time you've actually drained any of that, right? So yes and no, I think is my response to that.
In my last video, I talked about how, you know, all of your intentions kind of don't matter.
That's true.
At the end, you just have a game and the player plays it and they get what you were going for or they don't. And it kind of doesn't matter what you were trying to do. So I think that if you play your game exhaustively, you can still get something that is fun and balanced.
That's the
I know
goal,
that Tim plays the games he directs and works on exhaustively.
Tim
because he does want
fame.
every path through to feel viable and rewarding and fun ultimately. I start from the other.
Now, I might be nitpicking here already, but I would say viability and fun are not necessarily synonyms for balanced, right? You can have a balanced game where something is objectively, or sorry, you can have a game where something is objectively worse than another thing, but it still be viable. Often a problem that I see when okay, thank you, Rocketeer. But often an issue I see when people are going for balanced is they see that, 25% of players are all just picking the same thing because it's the optimum, because it's the best way to do a thing, right? A concept in game design that, or an analogy that I learned in college, taking game design that I loved was, if golf didn't force you to use a club, people would just pick the ball up and drop it into the hole. But there is a small subsect of people that would go, well, that's not fun, that's not boring, and the reason I'm playing a game is to have fun, so I'm going to invent my own fun. I'm going to self-limit. I'm going to put my own handicap on it, and I'm going to use the club to try and hit it in there. I'm going to see how viable it is. And most of the time you lose, but it is still viable because sometimes you'll get that hole in one. Now, that's not balanced at all. Obviously, it's way easier to just pick the ball up and drop it into the hole. But that unbalanced doesn't mean the other one isn't viable at all. It just means it's really, really edge case difficult. You're at a huge handicap there. But that can be interesting, especially when you've got a huge skill difference between two players when we're talking competitively, right? And even cooperatively, that can be interesting. If you've got a player that is newer to a crunchy game, for example, and they're playing an optimum build, yeah, that's very true. Viability in a RPG is highly contextual, Ragnar guy. That's very true. Hey, Elf Hunter, welcome in. Yeah, we haven't gotten in too deep yet, so I'll try not to pause him super often. But if you've got a brand new player, right, and they're playing a super optimum build, of whether they're net decked in a card game or they've just picked a build off of D&D Beyond or looked one up on an RPG subreddit for Shadowrun or something like that, they can hang with somebody that knows all of the deeper mechanics that is building a suboptimal build, something that's not great. And that can be a lot more fun than if they both did optimal builds. And, well, okay, now the Decker in Shadowrun, for example, is just auto succeeding on everything because he's just buying dice. It's like, oh, that's difficulty 4, I buy dice on it. Oh, that's difficulty 5, I buy dice on it. Whatever the case may be. Whereas the new player that's got a optimal build that doesn't know every little nook and cranny, that doesn't know exactly how to get the most mileage out of the build, I'll give the example of Nicholas. I'll pick on you a little bit. Not using panache in our Pathfinder game. Well, that's fine because we built you a very, very competent character that you don't need to know as much about Pathfinder. You don't, as compared to Conway, who built a little bit more of a glass cannon, who built something that, it is more helpful to know, okay, I could use this to do that and this to do this and have a bunch more moving pieces going on. You just need to know the core mechanics to get moving, though. So that's a long-winded way of saying that. I hope that made sense.
Your direction. I start with balance on paper. And it involves more upfront work, but I think it saves more work on the back end because there's more consideration upfront given to, is the theory of this balanced on paper, which doesn't guarantee that it actually is. But I think that it's a good way to start, a good way to think about things, to conceive of things before you start moving forward. And I start with balance on paper because I find that it's easier to push things apart as you go. It's easier to push things apart than it is to pull everything back together.
That's interesting.
So I've seen plenty of games that have very little balance and aren't fun.
Whoa, what's happening?
Or they have very little balance and some
is
classes
my camera
are
finally
fun
dying?
and a lot aren't, or some builds are fun and most are completely, if not viable, they're not enjoyable to play through. And so that's where I'm coming from. And I don't want
unenjoyable. That's the big thing for me. But because I think you can do either or. Yeah, I know. I don't know what that was about. They're trying to, the balance fans are trying to get me here. No. The issue I have with this is that there are some players that will go, oh, playing the difficult non-optimal build isn't fun for them. For me, playing the optimal build is usually, that's the case for me. If it's just, I walk over to the guy, I hit him, all right, I kill him, now I move on to the next thing, and it's just, I'm going to do the correct thing every time. Because when you make a game too balanced, there's two different ways that goes. One, everything becomes a coin flip. Right? Yeah, exactly. Like rock, paper, scissors is balanced, or guess heads or tails. That's totally balanced. It's a random guess. You have a 50-50 chance that each time, yeah, slightly different depending on the coin you use, because sometimes the head can be slightly heavier. But basically, it's a 50-50 shot, right? That's not interesting at all. That's not fun, but it's perfectly balanced. Sure. But what he's saying, we need to, start there and then diverge. That's easier than starting wildly varied and then converging. That's interesting. It's not, I'm not saying he's saying this, but I am saying this is an example of games that are very balanced. You can run into that issue, right? The other side of it versus just guess it's a straight coin flip, because this is a literal example of this, Tekken 8, right? They have tried to make the game more balanced. They've explicitly said, we're trying to bring the skill gap closer and closer together. And by doing that, they basically just introduced a bunch of things that are, there's no skill involved. You just have to hold this guess. Either you have to duck or you have to hold back. That's it. There's no deeper mechanic involved. You just have to guess. That's not very interesting. It's not interesting for the attacker, where they have this huge move list of 80 to 100 different moves, but now they're boiled down to using 3 of them if they want to win the game, right? And then it's not interesting if they don't use those 2 moves, because then their opponent gets a chance to take their turn and they have the same conundrum. Well, do I play interesting and use some crazy move that they've never seen before that I don't get to use very often, or do I use the 2 moves that win, right? You could argue that means the other 99 moves on the list are unbalanced, right? So when we're talking about balance, I guess my point here is we need to come from a standpoint of the characters balanced with each other. Is one class balanced compared to another class? Are the individual spells in one class's spell list, or the individual moves in one character's arsenal, are those balanced when compared against each other? What are we talking here, right? Because there's a lot of different ways where you can balance compared to what, right?
Things to feel the same. And that's always the fear, I think, that people, when people say if it's overly balanced, it's going to feel homogenous. It can feel that way. That's certainly true.
That's how
and that's not my goal. But I think that often when I see whether it's a spread of weapons or a design of classes or races or species or whatever that you can play in a game, there's really obviously no effort to make them feel comparable, or rather, again, not equal, but just like you look at them and you say, why would I ever make a character with this background? Why would I ever make a character of this class?
When the unbalance is that
equip a character with this weapon?
Yeah, you don't want that.
Any of these weapons. Like, I mean, this is one of my long-standing criticisms of D&D is that for most of the editions, and it's been a while since I played 5th a lot, but most of the editions, most of those weapons, basically they don't even need to be in the book.
Yep.
They're just bad. Like, players wouldn't use them. If you can do just basic comparison, you're like, well, this does 1d8 slashing or piercing, and this does 1d6, and they're the same cost.
So, crunch chance win yet again. When you don't have enough mechanical differentiation between, in this example, weapons, you run into 1, a problem from game balance, 2, a problem with the world. Why are people making light maces if if they are just objectively worse in every way than this other thing, right? That's not how any sort of even and especially pre-industrial societies work. The proud nail gets hammered down. You find out where all of the kinks and what works and what doesn't work, right? Right. And in this particular example, when the tech level is the same, right? You have a town that is capable of producing homogeneous steel, and they've got magical steel even. It's even better than we could produce today with modern metallurgy. And you've got the smith that's cranking out maces, and he's cranking out longswords. Well, if the mace is just worse than the longsword, and your character asks the really awkward question to that blacksmith, hey, why do you make these? And he can't say, oh, it's for defeating light armor, because there's no mechanic for that. He can't say, oh, it's for, it's a little lighter because it's not lighter, or because, like most 5e GMs, they don't take into account weight at all. Oh, it's cheaper because it's not cheaper. Then, the world is starting to break apart here. Yeah, and Goblet, sure, if it's a cultural or technological thing, makes perfect sense. If it's an access thing, right? But a lot of things in 5e simply aren't. Let's see. Zolar tried to make me choose a background starter kit of equipment for the 5e game. I refused. Yeah, like my wife, character that she started as a street urchin, so she was like, no, I'm not going to start with the given, 160 gold per class or whatever it is, because typically in Pathfinder, if you're a rogue, I think you start with a decent amount of money because it's assumed that you've been in some lucrative business making, whatever that entails. She's like, no, I'm a street urchin. She doesn't have any money, so she started with very little money. Made sense. If a weapon or equipment or build can be used in all cases, then it becomes a staple and ubiquitous. Yeah, see spears, see polearms, right? Those should be everywhere in at least a fairly grounded fantasy game because, well, they're everywhere for the past thousands of years, right? Yeah, exactly. If every tool should have a use case, otherwise the tool doesn't get invented, right? Or at least it doesn't stick around.
I'm just never going to do that. And that might be realistic in some cases based on what you're talking about. But I don't think that's fun. I don't think that lack of balance is good for the player because it kind of says to the player right away,
right?
If you were thinking of making a character like this, don't bother. This is bad. It also means that, for example, to go with gear, and I'll get back to this with an example from something I DM'd, you give out gear and it's considered trash automatically because the base gear is so unbalanced that it's like inconceivable that you would ever use a piece of armor of that type. So it's basically like it's just for money, basically.
Yeah.
It's not a great feeling as a designer. And especially if you come up with a character concept, which might be somewhat conceptual, somewhat about a background, something aesthetic, but the aesthetic is a non-viable aesthetic. Not that everything has to be about aesthetic, but let's be real. Like, we make characters with a vision of something in mind.
Yeah.
And part of that is an aesthetic. And that's what we think is cool about it. But if the game says, well, you think this is cool, but mechanically it's extremely not cool, don't do this.
Right.
It's not a good feeling. So I start from that at the paper level saying,
although if we're trying to make something a little more grounded, I would say there is what's the word for it? There is an element of style, especially that we see in a lot of the European dueling treatises, this is not a great technique. If the other guy is as skilled as you, it's probably going to get you killed. That's not the point, though. It's to show I'm so skilled, I can beat you with a super flashy, cool-looking technique that's not practical at all, right? So I think games need some suboptimal, 99% of the options must be suboptimal by definition, but, some bad options so that you can feel cool when you make the bad option work, right? Because you can always, in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, even in 5th edition, you never have to make your players fight. Oh, you're level 5? Well, you're fighting level 5 NPCs. A bad level 5 character can pretty much always beat a level 3 character no matter what their build is like, right? The game is pretty finely tuned like that. So if you want to give that feeling, like I said, there are multiple axes on which we can adjust balance, right? We have a lot of different numbers, even in a game that's not super crunchy like 5e. There are other things that we can adjust to make, okay, we're going to make, this mace wielding guy feel cool because the game wants to push everybody to use polearms. Now, the problem in an RPG is that you have other guys on your team. And one of the Pathfinder 2nd edition games we watched, you have a problem occasionally where they nerfed the absolute piss out of the casters because the casters they viewed as being unbalanced and too strong in prior editions. To some credit, okay. And we watched these casters like struggle back and forth to deal with these giant centipedes. And when the fighter caught up with them, they just went boom, 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 boom. And then the fight was over in like 2 or 3 rounds as soon as the fighter got there. That is terrible. That is not fun nor interesting for anyone there except maybe the fighter. But even oftentimes the fighter feels like, well, what the hell? I feel like I'm taking away everybody else's fun because nobody else gets to do anything, right? Specializations being useless is often terrible too. We talk about trap options a lot, and I'll star that comment because I'd like to talk about that a little bit later. I'll let him talk some more. Loot-based video games use randomization to add variety, but there's usually still a best loot drop. And that's a struggle. I've had my players recently, as we started a new campaign some months ago and haven't been able to play it a ton, say they would actively prefer to get more random loot drops and not money, because they would like to have to use what they've got rather than immediately being able to choose whatever the best, the good or best object is. So they're actively telling me, oh, no, we like being unbalanced. We like having, a thing thrown in my lap and, okay, I've got to use this, right? Counterpoint, that's genre specific, Nicholas. Yeah, Luke Skywalker doesn't stop and loot every single stormtrooper for ammo and blasters. Sure, that's very true. But General Grievous does collect the fallen lightsabers of his foes. In Mad Max, he's collecting bullets constantly. That's a central component of that. In John Wick, he's picking up guns constantly. He's running out of ammo with one gun, throwing it at somebody, picking up his gun, drawing his knife, whatever. John Wick 3 at the beginning, he's, looking at a museum. He's trying to construct a revolver out of the demilled pieces. He's got a cylinder over here that works. He's walking timing over here, right? I'd say that's genre specific.
I want players to look at these options and feel that they have faith that if they pick these options, they're going to have fun and that it's going to be rewarding.
I know I'm immediately pausing him, but it's because he said the F word. And specifically in the context of intrinsic fun. Can we design something that is intrinsically fun? If you pick this option, you will have fun. Games are played for fun, right? That's the whole point of a game. If you play golf, will you have fun by nature of the fact that it's a game? No. You'll have fun with golf if you're the type of person that likes golf, right? There's nothing intrinsically fun about golf. We can look at individual mechanics of golf, the swing, how it's designed for, the human shoulder and anterior chain and everything linking together. It's a very biomechanically satisfying movement. Yeah. As you said there, Rocketeer Ed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that golf is inherently fun. It means it is done for fun, and some people find those aspects fun. So I think that's kind of a rabbit hole, and one you won't ever find the end of, trying to design a mechanic that looking for play it and you'll have fun. I'm not too sure about that one. Hey, Frenetic Roleplay, good afternoon.
They don't necessarily know that, but it's not being disqualified immediately. There are no stats, there are no classes or species or anything where they look at and they say, this is just bad. Why would I ever build this? And you can argue that, yeah, if you want to challenge, that's like a challenge option. I think that if that's not clearly broadcast, or for example, if the deficiencies of the option aren't apparent until you experience a lot of the content,
that is a problem. Like Rocketeer Red here said, if your specialization is suddenly useless, if the game is telling you a mace is really good at anti-armor and it gives you a +2 to hit armored opponents, but you're always hitting opponents by 5 or more, well, then you should have just used the sword that did a higher damage die or 2 more damage or whatever. And so if the game is telegraphing poorly, or the designer's intent does not bear out in the actual gameplay, that's a huge problem, because then, what happened? Hey, wait a minute. You said this was going to do X and it did not do X. It doesn't do anything, in fact. If it clearly said, hey, this is a challenging weapon to use and it's for people that enjoy a bit of a more difficult experience, there you go, man. That's no problem with it, right? So there is some amount of telegraphing that needs to be done to make sure those trap options, the so-called trap options, are very clear, right? Mentioning Elden Ring here, the deprived in Dark Souls 1 oftentimes actually ends up being the best character in the long run because you start at level 1, so you get more levels to vary your stats out, right? If you are skilled enough to be able to handle the game with no armor, a crappy shield, and just a club. Though the club's awesome, right? Might be bad, but does it look cool, right? He just talked about aesthetics, how important aesthetics are, right? Is the way the class works communicated instantly. Yeah, and that is there's always that struggle, right, of communicating mechanics and communicating aesthetics and lore, especially in a book, right? I'm going back to Shadowrun because you'll have this giant wall of text of lore and, you know, all the aesthetics of the class, and you're like, that's awesome. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, I didn't know that's these mechanics don't communicate at all with that idea, and you've just read like walls of text only to be disappointed. Yeah, that's a problem.
Well, then you're just deferring the disappointment. Then you're putting it off.
Right.
You don't get to figure out until you're X number of hours in. Oh,
Right.
I made a mistake.
And I've been there before.
You know, I saw there was a video Tim made about D&D and differences in D&D and options opening up and options being viable. Something I remember from when I DM'd games, first edition games, second edition games, were the limits, the sort of like arbitrary limits on like demi-human class limits. And I know those were in first. I can't quite remember if they're in second, which is amazing.
They're in third edition, in fact.
It seems very distant and very not real when you make the character. So you make an elf fighter mage thief or whatever, and it's very much reaping and sowing, where right away you're like, this character is awesome, he's very powerful. And then you just hit a hard limit and you stop progressing. You literally stop progressing. You can't gain levels anymore. It's not a great feeling, especially.
Yeah. And that's an interesting one too, the way that the early Dungeons and Dragons handled level limits, right? So like the monk was unique in that they kept gaining hit points past level 10. I think it was level 10, and nobody else did, right? So they kind of sucked until you got to level 10. Well, if the campaign fizzles out at level 7, level 8, who cares, right? That doesn't matter. The monk kind of just sucks in that case. And when the monk just sucks, you can run into issues of, okay, the aesthetic of a monk is really cool, but why wouldn't I just play a fighter, be allowed to wear armor, get a better base attack bonus, better Thaco, and just punch people with like brass knuckles or my gauntlets? And that's a real question you have to ask until like updated versions of Pathfinder 3. But, you know, we're talking like 10, 15 years ago. That's a question you had to ask yourself a lot. That's a problem, right? Why did you design this whole thing for it to be useless until way down the line? Or you design this whole thing that is useless way far down the line? I think that's actually a lesser issue because you can always just retire the character, bring in a new one at level whatever. Though a lot of OSR guys won't let you do that. They'll make you come in at level 1 or at 3 levels lower than whatever the highest is. I think there's a reason most people moved away from that game design. It's a little clunky, right? Outward video game might be one of the best examples of horizontal character progression. I will have to look at it. I have not played Outward. I used to say the vintage formats, 2 people seeing who can win their game of solitaire first. Yes, exactly. The worst formats of Hearthstone are like that. The worst formats of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are like that, where in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, pretty much everybody has a one-turn kill. That's not that interesting. Sure, it's balanced. Everybody has it. Anybody can do it. But a lot of the archetypes are just left in the dirt, right? It means if your archetype doesn't have a first turn or a one-turn kill, then it's basically useless. Well, that sucks, and that's unbalanced. But in a balanced matchup, so in the vacuum of what is balanced, it's not very interesting. So there's two ways to look at that.
If you've invested in a tabletop game, I mean, if that character is in the teens of levels, that could be, if you're really aggressive, that might be months. It's probably years of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good feeling. So anyway,
I would disagree, right? And of course, we're talking feeling here, so that's you're never going to agree on feeling, right? It's not something that's quantifiable. But if I've been playing the same character for years and they peaked, it's their time to retire as an adventurer, right? This is the plateau of my career. We see this in real life. We see guys fighting into their 40s and 50s in MMA, and it's like, dude, you had such a good career. Don't be disappointed that you can't, your knees are blown out and you don't have the stamina or the explosiveness that you used to. Be happy you got here, right? End on a high note. Let some new blood come in, right? Start a new hobby. Look, you've got all this money from adventuring. Go buy a house and crank it out. D&D realized they couldn't monetize imagination, so that's why they focus on builds and classes. I think builds and classes are a great way to kickstart your imagination. I think they're a great... imagination is really hard to put mechanics to. Mechanics I can use to kickstart my imagine. I made a video on that a little bit ago, like bottom up versus top down character design. I like having a lot of variety to sort of start going, oh, that's a cool idea. I didn't think about that. Hobbies are intellectual means to emotional ends. Yeah, I would say a lot of them are the good ones.
I don't want players to experience that. I do want them to have fun. I don't want classes to feel the same. I don't want options to feel the same, but I do the upfront work of paper balancing, conceptual balancing.
Yeah.
So that I can pull it apart later and get that difference in the iteration.
I think that idea of like top level balancing is a general.
I wanted to give an example of a Pathfinder game that I ran quite a while ago. More than 10 years ago. This is first edition Pathfinder. And we had an experience where it had been a while since I'd played D&D, or certainly run D. Actually, since I'd run D&D, I had been playing D&D. And I just found...
If you're running, you're playing.
I was giving out gear that was immediately being ignored, like the bonuses on the gear, the additional stats on the gear were cool and good. I mean, the players seemed to, but then they would say like, well, this is scale armor. You're not going to wear scale armor. Who wears scale armor? There's kind of like 2 to 3 good armor options in Pathfinder based on your class and your dexterity.
At a very high level, that's true. I wonder how long ago this was. Because when Pathfinder First Edition was very young, that was kind of true. You either went full plate, you went spider silk armor. If you had insane amounts of money, you went with celestial armor. Everybody in between used like a mithril chain shirt. That was it. One of the advantages, because some people will look at it cynically and say, oh, they printed 8 million splat books so they can make more money. And okay, consider, though, that the more options we have, this becomes a lot more interesting. We're in a non-solved game now, right? We are in a situation where it's not the heavy armor guy has his heavy armor, the medium armor guy has his medium armor, and the unarmored and light armor people have their light armor, and that's what they pick, and that's what they wear for the rest of the game. But he's describing an issue that I ran into that I already sort of mentioned, which is, yeah, if you give your characters the money and the access to shops that they can just go and buy that stuff, they're just going to put the ball in the hole, right? And when it doesn't degrade, when you don't have rust monsters or sunder builds, there we go. There's a bad, unbalanced build, a sunder build. But what does it lead to? Oh, it leads to a way for the characters to have to deal with an unbalanced situation, a fun situation. Oh my God, my gear is gone. And if you have the kind of player that's like, no, GM, you destroyed all my gear, all my money, don't play with them. Don't play with children. I mean, unless they, there's some cool role players that are kids, but I have not generally had that experience. You want to role play with emotionally mature people, right? Whether that be don't play with 13-year-olds or don't play with 40-year-olds that have the minds of 13-year-olds, right? So yeah. Am I on the camp that Pathfinder 1E is D&D 3.75E? I mean, that's what they started with, right? Because Pathfinder originally was a setting and supplementation for 3.5 in around 08, 09. And then later in 09, they branched out to Pathfinder First Edition as its own game. Ton of similarities. It's the same core system. Everything's pretty much forwards compatible from 3.5 to Pathfinder First Edition. So yeah, you can definitely look at it that way. If only there were a way to give players the ability to choose their own specialties that aren't constrained by, say, something like a progression tree or feat tree. Yeah. I can't. I know. I can't imagine such a thing. Elephant in the Room does a great job for Pathfinder First Edition at chopping down a lot of the dumb feat tree options, the feat taxes, as they say. There's definitely a risk in a lot of games that are balanced. Take Pathfinder Second Edition. They want to balance things so heavily that they go, okay, if you're a monk, well, once you start picking the style feats as a monk, you are now in the style monk branch of the tree. If you pick the branch of the monk tree that wants to do really good at Stunning Fist, well, you're now in that branch, right? They can more easily curate how good are style feats versus how good are Stunning Fist feats when they've made that distinction, rather than if you can just grab one here, grab one there. But it's way less interesting for that. There's way less replayability, right? You play a monk once. Okay, I've done the style feats. You play a monk again. All right, I've done the Stunning Fist build. And now what? Well, okay, I guess I move on to another class, right? Pathfinder First Edition, how many subclasses are there for monk? What, like 40? Are all of them good? No, but you'll never run out of options for it. And that's before you're considering all the different feats that are just, I'm just going to take Vital Strike and then we'll move on. I don't have to take any other feats. That doesn't block me off of anything else, right? Or it doesn't encourage me necessarily to go down Greater Vital Strike and all the other stuff in there. I can take one style feat and then be done with it. So yeah.
And then everything else is it's just trash. There's no reason to wear it. And I was like, I hate that so much.
Let me give you a few reasons to wear it. It's what you have, because your other armor has been stolen or it's been damaged, as aforementioned. It's cheaper. And you don't have that much money because you've been robbed. It's what this village in the middle of nowhere can produce, because this druidic village only produces wooden or textile armor because they won't wear metal. It's what this tribal society produces because they don't have access to metal, so they're only using bronze armor, the sort of metal that they can get on the surface easily. This civilization doesn't use armor at all, in the Mana Scar, because there are firearms everywhere. Why would you wear armor? So armor is very difficult to find. Oh, we've got this old breastplate. You can wear that. That's what we have. There's 5 options just off of the top of my head I can think of as why would you use this, right? Think Fallout New Vegas, right? Why would I use the varmint rifle, right? Well, because it's what I have at the beginning of the game. Right? I'm not going to keep using it throughout the end of the game if I'm an energy weapons build, but you don't give me energy weapons super early on, except for the laser pistol, which I might not have picked up. I might have missed that for whatever reason. There's a ton of different reasons for me to use other weapons, other armor. other than this one does more damage, this one does less damage. Or as he nodded to, I just want to challenge, and I think scale armor looks cool, right? Scale armor wasn't made in the Roman era because it was better or worse than Lorica segmentata or Lorica hamata. It was made largely because of the materials culture and the access to technology that they had, right? Scale armor eventually fell out of favor, and this is something that's kind of odd about the fantasy aspect to it, because if we have scale armor coexisting with plate mail, coexisting with firearms, this is something that happened in the High Middle Ages, but it puts us squarely in the High Middle Ages, where there are very select people that are still using scale armor. Why? Well, because that's what their smith knows how to make. It's how his grandpa taught him how to make it. Yeah. If you've ever seen a kukri, and it's got this little odd thing down by the handle, down by the ricasso on the blade, no one can tell you what that's for. Kukris are just made that way because that's how kukris are made. And then nobody knows exactly what that material is for. One of the common guesses is, well, a really good swordsmith, that was his maker's mark. So people started copying his maker's mark and were trying to upsell their stuff. That's a good way to think about it, right? Are those kukris actually better? No, they might be worse, but your players or the characters, hopefully, might be tricked into buying a crappy piece of armor because it looks like a good piece of armor. And then on paper, it's just the stats of the scale armor, but it looks like full plate harness, but it's just crappily made. The temper isn't right. What have you. Everything's about money. A lot is about money, for sure. I am reminded that comment on everything is about money. Dark Sun has a really cool way that they approach this, because in Dark Sun, full plate armor, metal is so rare and expensive that a full plate harness is like the most expensive thing in the book. If I remember correctly, it's like 100,000 gold or something insane like that. And people have even gone to using, gold isn't even, or copper isn't the base lowest currency anymore. It's pieces of ceramic because the metal is so rare. Hey, Pond of the Orb. Yeah, 200 stim packs. Yeah, if the equipment in the book's too strong and use the GM can change it. This is true. But Josh Sawyer is speaking as a game designer. So yeah, this that's a context we should keep in mind, right? A little bit. But that is, yeah, it's a good nod. Yeah, full harness plus a horse should make you overwhelmingly powerful. A build that I would love to play at some point, which again, great nod to mechanics in games, because it's something I never would have thought of. Pathfinder First Edition has a Centaur Charger for Cavalier, where you are your own mount, and yeah, that would be. I think that would be a really cool thing to play. Yes, Dark. The setting is phenomenal. I've never had a chance to play in it. Every time I try to get a group together for it, it just fizzles out for whatever reason. But yeah, I love Dark Sun.
And so I redesigned the armor system, which took me a couple of days. I was just like, I think it's bad and dumb. I don't understand what decisions I'm supposed to be making here, or the players are, because it's basically you're locked into one choice forever. So I changed it around and I made it a sliding scale, which, if you played Pillars, that kind of like, there's a very linear sort of gradation of options. And there were questions about it. And then we started playing, and then players just started using different armors, not just starting with different armors, but when they would find loot, they would then switch to that new armor, or maybe they would think about it and stick with what they had, but it was a choice. It was an actual choice that required thought. And I think that's good. I think that's fun. I think finding loot and kind of going like, I don't know, me, or like maybe you could use it, or I could use it, or we could switch, or I think those are fun moments to make decisions about your character build. And I thought it worked well. I also removed pretty much all of the stat requirements on feats.
I think that's probably a good thing. When everyone on the topic of balance, if everyone is coming to pretty much the same conclusion, that's probably a good idea. So he's come to this very similar conclusion to what the elephant in the room guys came up with. I totally got rid of intelligence requirements for combat feats because we have base attack bonus, right? What is that saying? It's saying your character is very skillful at fighting. If he's very skillful at fighting, why does he also have to have a base level of book smarts to think, if I shoot this guy in just the right spot, I can do more damage? What anatomical knowledge? What are we, no, we're just going to say that, there's too many. When the abstraction Venn diagram is like this knotted mess, it becomes nonsense, right? So I think like gutting requirements for feats and just letting you pick kind of whatever, that's a good thing.
Which might sound radical.
In fact, in my homebrew document, I would add that there's a big section at the end, which is like, just at GM's discretion, waive dumb feat requirements, right? Oh, this feat is only accessible by this race. And it's things like, oh, you're really good at laying traps. And so, what? Why kobolds? Why do you have to be a kobold to be really good at laying traps? It's not like there is one. There's some that make sense. Like there is a ranger variety for Kasata, which are these four-armed giant humanoids, which allows you to dual wield bows. I was like, okay, that's cool, right? Obviously, you need four arms to be able to do that. So there you go. Let me catch up here real quick. My game in VGP essentially forces you to be very creative to defeat full plate. Your best bet is to grapple and find a gap. Yep. Then that was the best bet for hundreds of years, even after the advent of firearms. Just started Pathfinder 1 game as a rogue. Love rogue. There's so many different things you can do with it. Yep, he's right. Mithras does well with intelligence. It speeds up your skill growth, but it doesn't force you to be a genius mid-combat. In Pokemon, TMs, the equivalent of spell scrolls, used to be single use. Great for that moment of which one should I teach this to? Yeah. I think making the game easier, more accessible in that way, made it less interesting. And it's because people were carrying around TM mules, right? Oh, I don't actually use this. I'm dying. I'm being made green. Nintendo's got a hold of me. Okay, well, I'm going to be this green square here. Oh, wow. Well, she finally died. This camera is from like 2011. So rest in peace. I've been talking about getting a new one. There we go. Yeah, when you sorry, that's really distracting me now. When you've taken it away to cater to, well, okay, I've just got a 5, but I don't want to do that. I want to have my full 16 layout and be able to change out whatever my TM mule is. And it's like, well, why don't you just not play with a TM mule? Why don't you teach one TM to this? It changes the way that you have to build your team, and you have to take some Pokemon that you wouldn't normally carry because they can learn the TM. That sort of difficulty is interesting. That challenge of having to think about how I want to build around is interesting. So I totally agree with them on that. The great crime of feat-based game design is, okay, GM, I want to leap down from the balcony and hit the goblin in the head. But you can't do it if you don't have the attack from above. Yeah. That, I would say, is not even necessarily an issue with feat-based games intrinsically. It's an issue with, one, game designers making you take a feat to go to the bathroom. And that is when the game designer does not know how easy a thing is to do. If my fantasy fighter is required to take a feat to hit a guy harder but less accurately, power attack in Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition, all the way up to Pathfinder 2nd edition for that matter. What are we saying, man? Like, it's ridiculous, right? It's something that even non-trained fighters can think, oh, I'm gonna just attack him a little bit, or I'm gonna hit him really hard. I'm gonna, put full pepper on this one, throw a wild swinging haymaker. So yeah, that's hate feat-based games. I like feats as a way to differentiate your character from the next character. I do not like only having access to skills because it means I can usually play the game 2 or 3 like I've played enough of Traveler. Is it a fine game? Yeah, and I'm done with it because I feel like I've played every interesting character concept you can as far as the mechanics will allow you, right? Like when I have a giant list of 1,000+ feats, I'm never going to run out of interesting things to do there mechanically. And as long as I have something mechanically interesting to do, I'll show up to 1D and 2D games all day, right? Vastly prefer playing 3D, 4D games, right? But I like that the mechanical crunch is giving me something interesting there too. I know some of these words. If I've said something esoteric, let me know. Let me know. I'll clarify what I mean. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So things like that. So things like improved grapple. Somebody the other day said something in the Discord. I don't remember who it was, so I can't at you specifically, but they said like, oh, Pathfinder, you have to take a feat to be able to grapple. I think it was Space Roadie. I was like, no, you don't. You haven't fucking played Pathfinder if you think that's true. Like, if you are insanely physically strong, but you don't have the knowledge of how to grapple, which is what the feat is showing, you can grapple. You just take negatives to it. You can grapple successfully if you are bigger and stronger enough than whatever you're trying to grapple. All right. But the other guy, because you're doing it in an ungainly manner, gets an attack of opportunity. You have to take the feat to be able to intelligently shoot for takedowns. The orcs finally got him. I've got one still. I'm still drinking it. It's not working. Yes, good game design is not necessarily rock, paper, scissors, right? Look, man, I'm not measuring in like 32 centimeters or whatever it is. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. Feats talents only make sense when involving supernatural stuff, like being able to cast magic or being born with a unique genetic feature in fantasy. I wouldn't say only, but I'd say that's like it's a good thing there. Oh, the Pokemon talk was pure gibberish. Yeah, no, I'm old Gen Z, young millennial. It's a poison for me. It's the CIA crack epidemic for my generation. No, there's plenty of you out there. You guys can't take all the credit. Conway's in there too. There's an idea for Door the RPG 2 in the second 40 mixtape out there. Check that out if you guys haven't, by the way. 40 mixtape on Drive Through RPG. Okay, let's let Josh keep talking here.
But it was fine. The players loved it because they didn't have to, again, this thing where, like 3rd edition 3.5 Pathfinder, if you didn't build your character a very specific way right away, you're going to get burned. Later, you're going to get burned in 3 levels, maybe 6, 7 levels. Maybe you're not going to realize the burn until 13 levels in. Oh, you did it wrong, dummy.
This is is only an issue if you have a shit GM. Like I said, it was more of an issue with just core Pathfinder without any of the Unchained updates or splat books that came out in later years. This is only, like I said, that's only an issue if you've I really struggle to build an actively bad Pathfinder character. It's really quite hard, right? Like I said, Nicholas here is actively not using one of his character's main. Yeah. Well, you were actively not using a main class feature of Swashbuckler, and it just kind of didn't matter. And we were playing a module that recommended having one more player than we did. I think you hit the nail on the head. When you're in a dungeon and it's constant level X enemy that has X amount of that's I was about to say I think you used it maybe once or twice, but you actively told me I'm not going to worry about all this new stuff I can do at level 3. The trap builds in Pathfinder First Edition are grossly exaggerated if you are running a good module or if you have a good GM. That's what I would say. And I think that's one of the things you can see where Pathfinder is a very well-designed game from the standpoint of balance, because go look up 3 different build guides for fighter, and what's green, what's blue, what's purple will often be different things. You'll have guys saying, this thing is dog shit. And then the next build says, this thing is awesome. And it tells you more about how their games are run, right? Do they say swimming, everything swimming based is terrible? Why would you ever pick this? Well, that tells you their GM is probably never throwing a body of water in their game, right? They're probably never getting on a boat and sailing anywhere in their games, right? It tells you more about that than it does about the actual game mechanics, to be honest. Yeah. Lots of this stuff is oh yeah, Celestial Warlock dogshit healer. Yeah, exactly. And that can be fun, right? Like in a lot of these games, unless they are running them antagonistically and actively trying to kill the player characters, it's fine. Lots of these trap builds, they're fine. I'm going to run into an issue, many dozens of levels down the line. Well, even if you do, that's what the retraining system is in the game for. Imagine this, right? You run into a point in the game, boxing anime, Hajime no Ippo. Plenty of times where our protagonist finds out that, oh man, I've just been spamming the jab and my jab has been working super well for me. But now I've run up to this guy. All of a sudden, I'm level 10 and the jab that I've been using for 9 levels, it's not working anymore. Guess what? He loses the fight and now we have to train our cross. We have to train our overhand right. We have to train our... It doesn't have to be crap. Now my build sucks now. Go back, go train. There are mechanics for this in Pathfinder First Edition. There are mechanics for this in a lot of different games. And don't just make that off-screen downtime. I spend my money, we wait 3 weeks, and now I'm a new build. That's not very satisfying, right? It's a way more satisfying to find the master on the mountain, to find the fencing school in the city, and spend a couple weeks and I have that tension of, can we afford to spend these couple of weeks? Can we afford the cost that this guy is going to ask for to teach, right? Way more interesting. That's you can expand that to most D&D players probably. I love water because no matter the PC's power, it obscures vision, it limits movement, it's cold, it suffocates quickly. Yes, yes. Think about, the great difficulties of human travel over the millennia. It's usually because of water.
First time you played the game, you wanted to take spring attack? Dumbass. Oh, you should have done everything exactly right.
Okay, spring attack. He did call my bluff here because he called out the like number one most broken. So spring attack, if you don't know, allows you to break the action economy in Pathfinder. It lets you run in, and instead of just getting your one charge attack, you get to take your full litany of attacks. So if you have haste, if you have a bunch of attacks from being a monk, boom, you get to do all of that. It's super broken. But you have to take a huge wall of prerequisite feats. You basically have to make a character that is shitty for 10 levels. And then you become nuts broken at level 12 or whatever the level is that when you get it. See what they were going for, right? You have to build up to it. But again, if the game fizzles out at level 7 or 8, and you just never get there, you just played a shitty character for no reason, right? If you start at just having spring attack, every other melee character feels like, what the hell? This guy's just flying all over the place, demolishing things. Not really fun for anyone involved there. That is something that falls on that line of egregiously unbalanced, right? So yeah, that's a good example. But the game that you see all the prerequisites for it right away, right? If you want to build for spring attack, you know immediately, okay, I have to do all of this, that, and the other thing, right? Reading the card explains the card.
From the start.
Hold on, let me wake my dog up. He is like snoring like crazy right now, and I'm sure that's coming over the mic. Dodo. Yeah, hey Dory, you're snoring a bit. She's staring at me. She's in another dimension right now.
And that's part of the design process, right? Like you design it one way for a certain experience and a different way for a different experience. Another thing that I got a lot of flack for on Pillars 1 was how I designed attributes, because I really didn't want dump stats. And again, this goes back to my experiences as a DM, seeing lots of players build characters wrong. And they have a character concept and they build it, and it's not that it's not viable at all, which, again, Tim does bring this up. Like nobody wants.
See, fucking Josh Sawyer is really smart, and he's making me look like a dumbass by saying all of the things that I've been saying. It's almost like he's designed a few pretty good games in his time. Okay, so he's exactly tackling what I mentioned, which is that viability and pure balance we're differentiating those concepts. So, all right, watching the video explains the video. Fair play.
Wants to build a character that you realize you just can't play, like it can't move forward.
That's a big problem.
Yes, that's the sort of bare minimum. And again, I don't think every play experience should feel the same, but I do think that we should strive for something that feels more rewarding than simply this is viable. And that's what I'm going for. So the dump stat thing was to say, if you wanted to make a high intelligence fighter or high intellect fighter, if you wanted to make a high might wizard, there are builds that reward.
This is one of the big reasons I am against point buy, because point buy will always encourage you towards one thing because you're limited on resources. Well, I guess I'm going to dump int because it's not the most important thing for me as a fighter. Well, I guess I'm going to dump charisma because, again, I'll have somebody to do the talking for me. And it leads to things being very tropey and repetitive. If you roll for stats and get a more neutral spread of things, well, one, it makes things a little more realistic. And occasionally you get the Renaissance man. You get, well, I've got another 16 here because I rolled really well. Well, okay, so I've got a fighter that is really charismatic, or I can have a fighter that is really intelligent, not at the detriment to anything else, right? There we go. Pretty interesting. And you know, at a certain point in Pathfinder, you grow beyond a lot of your attributes, right? You're doing damage much beyond your strength because you've got so many magical items, so many abilities from your skill as a fighter, your base attack bonus, that the +1 here, +2 there from strength or dex is not making or breaking it. So the priorities kind of change at some point too. I like this point, but I struggle with the solution. Make all the states good. I enjoy games that keep the guardrails up to force you to make a real person without sacrificing the ability to specialize. Yeah, that's true. Tim Kaine talks about the Johnny One spell in GURPS, where you can make a very not real person, a guy that, you know, all his points are in the fireball spell. So as soon as a fire elemental comes up, he's just totally useless. He can't move forward in the game, as said. Is Interestingly, World of Darkness does point by a little better. You get to focus on physical, social, or mental stats, and there are limits. It's imperfect, but better than some. Yeah, I haven't looked too much into World of Darkness. It's not one I've played with a ton. I would have to look at it again. I did not care for Pillars 1. Hot take. Not really. I think I played Pillars of Eternity 1, and I kept I would get a couple hours in and then restarted as a new character, and then get a couple hours in and then restarted as a new character. I found over the years I don't like CRPGs. If I want to play a role-playing game, I want to play a role-playing game. Otherwise, give me an action game, right? Lean into what computer games can do well, right? I think New Vegas is like the perfect hybrid of that, right? It's got the RPG elements, but it's also got good enough gunplay, especially after you mod it, to justify being a video game, right? I do not feel like games like the Baldur's Gate video games, the Pillars of Eternity's out there, the Icewind Dale, they don't scream to me, I'm justifying the fact that I'm on a computer. Right? You can actually replay the story and have a unique experience in New Vegas. Believe me, right? 40 half sword, I could see doing that unironically. Maybe. I haven't played it. I've seen it, but I haven't. Those games frustrate me in the way of, it is harder for me to do the actions in the game than it is for me to do them in real life. Like Kingdom Come Deliverance drives me nuts because it doesn't feel like I'm playing a guy with a sword. It feels like I'm trying to drive a tank or pilot a fighter jet because the controls are so unintuitive. And having done HEMA for, a decade at this point, when I want to do the thing, I just do the thing, right? My body just moves through physical space, not hold your mouse over here, click it exactly. Yes, it's exactly like QWOP. It's like, it's moving a mouse and pressing on a keyboard is not at all like the gross motor skills you're doing with a sword. I've heard it's good, but I can't play it. I played 30 minutes and I'm just like, I'm wanting to throw the keyboard. I just can't do it.
Heard that. And some people liked this and a lot of people complained about it. We pretty much kept the same system in Deadfire, tweaked slightly. But I think it was a success. Ultimately, I mean, from my perspective, I love seeing all the builds. People are still talking about crazy.
That is exactly what I ran into. Is I just kept wanting to build a new character. I would play like 2-3 hours. I would go, ooh, I want to. My wife loves them. I have Kingmaker, and I installed it, and then something else came out around the time that I installed it, and I just never booted it up. As I installed that, I installed Suikoden 1 and 2 remasters, and then something else, and I never played any of them. I think it may have been the new Dying Light, and I played a little bit of that. I keep starting games and then having like work issues pop up or something happen, right? Because video games have dwindled to like my third or fourth or fifth hobby down the line. So I just I haven't gotten tucked into those in a little bit, and then I keep going back to my old favorites. And I'm at a spot in New Vegas right now. I wanted to stream some New Vegas, but I'm at a spot where like right next to the Sunset Sarsaparilla factory with all the fiends, where my game just keeps crashing, and I can't figure out why. Because I don't think I've changed my mod list at all, and the entire rest of the game up to that point I haven't had any crashes, and if I avoid it, it doesn't crash. So I don't know what's going on there.
Varied builds for Pillars 1 or for Deadfire, and builds in classes, the races, the gear that they use, the attribute arrays, everything. It's so wide open.
Yeah,
and I love seeing the creativity that players come up with, and it just keeps going. And I love that community keeps finding new ways to create crazy concepts, whether they're role-playing concepts that they mechanize or mechanical concepts that they then just want to role play. But I love that. I love.
He said one of my favorite things. He said, man, I know he doesn't have much time left here, so he's not going to elaborate on this, but exactly what I'm talking about. Top down or bottom up. Mechanical things that you want to role play things that you want to mechanize. The crunch and the flavor, they are not mutually exclusive concepts. They are intrinsically linked to some extent. That is awesome that he just like in a passing comment runs on that. Man, that's awesome. I want him to talk more about that. I'll leave a comment for him.
Seeing players have that experience, I really do not like when players try to build something and then they say, yeah, this just isn't possible. I can't do this. Like, I had this character concept, but it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there are always extreme examples on very hard difficulty where those things don't work. But most players find ways to make them work, and ways to make them work in ways that feel their own and special to their playthrough. They don't feel like, even if they played the same class, it doesn't feel the same.
Right.
And that's what I'm going for. And I have seen some of this. I'm not going to say that I started this trend, but if someone else wants to say it, I'll take the compliment. But it's notable, I think, that looking at Diablo, if you've played the Derblers over the years, there are definitely dump stats in the first, I would say 3. Actually, I can't remember 3 as well as the first 2. First 2 have real clear dump stats. 4, not really. I mean, it's arguable that in certain builds you don't need certain stats, but it is really oriented around, you better kind of keep all these reasonably high.
And when you have something that forces you to keep all of the stats fairly high like that, the build variety starts to go out the window, right? Because it's like, well, okay, if I've got to have all of them, high to a certain extent, then why do I build this other thing, right? I have these points that I have to put in here to keep the pace up, right? I don't want my gunslinger to have to put points in intelligence, or he suddenly doesn't know how his gun works at a certain level. He caps out at a certain point. I don't want my fighter to have to put points into charisma, or the skill of talking to swordsmiths is going to be so difficult that he can't buy any new equipment, right? That sort of approach to balancing is what I really don't like. I do agree that you don't, like I said, he said at the beginning, it's the disagreement on, is it the best movie ever made, or is it a fucking awesome movie? It's kind of different ways of saying the same thing. Ultimately, it becomes a syntactical issue. And at a certain point, I think the main nitpicks here amount to differences between medium rare and rare, not differences between medium rare and well done, right? Oh my god, yeah. There's another thing that I just gutted. I just said, fuck it, everybody gets dex to damage at level 5, and then gunslingers get a free feat to make up for that, because that is like world bending, right? It's breaking the world when it's like, well, everybody's got to do that, right? Hey, I agree with you. And Pathfinder agrees with you too, because they have composite bows, and a composite bow does require minimum strength to be used, and they do more damage based on your strength. There's another one for your drinking game for all of you playing at home. My biggest critique with tactical games like Draw Steel, it's a mechanical board game first and a role-playing game second. Yeah. Somebody left a comment on a video on my post on YouTube recently on what videos they want me to make next on teamwork and tactics and things like that in role-playing games. And I think when you try to mechanize them more and more, they become more and more intrusive and more one-dimensional. Or eventually, oh, okay, I do the thing now. And I don't have to describe it because, well, there's a mechanic there. And when players think like that, the mechanical starts to fall apart. Combat starts becoming, when there's DM burnout, it's when things start to become routine, right? And when things start to become routine, that's when you start to look at ending the campaign, right? When it's, I walk over here, I walk up, I attack it, boom, next thing. Okay. We walk over here, we flank it, I attack it, boom, next thing. Whereas when you have a more complicated network of things, right? You have flanking, that's a thing you can do. You have high ground, that's a thing you can do. You have you could form a shield wall. You have some weapons have reach, some weapons, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when there's that tactical depth to it, the game isn't solved, right? But you have to be approaching it from a standpoint of, is this something my character knows how to do? Is this something my character would do? Not, this is objectively the best thing to do, so I'm just going to pick it and do it, right?
And if you find gear, it doesn't feel as pointless if you have gear that bumps a stat that is not necessarily the thing that's your main stat.
That's true. But then it just becomes a box checking exercise, right? It just becomes, I have the new thing, I equip the new thing. All right, I kill the next thing. Oh, it's to have the new thing, I equip the new thing, right? You're not making many choices when all stats matter. You just pick the one with the bigger bulk of stats on it, RPGs, especially video game RPGs, have the RPGs is when number get bigger problem. Right. I blame Borderlands. I blame, I mean, we have Assassin's Creed suddenly adding RPG elements for God knows what reason. Because the interesting thing about an RPG is not number go up, right? Very few people are fondly remembering that time in D&D when their barbarian did 253 damage, right? They're remembering when they used an axe and cleaved the dragon's head off. They're remembering, what that 253 damage meant. But just equip better axe is not, it would be more interesting if you ran into a piece of kit that was a headband that took, made you take off your helmet, that made you way more intelligent, but you couldn't wear a helmet because of it. So now you had to consider, okay, would I like to be a lot more intelligent? We had a fighter, a guy playing a fighter who had like legitimate brain damage. He had like 6 intelligence, right? So he was able to like construct simple sentences, but that was about it. That was a character thing, right? He knew enough to know I'm stupid, like I'm detrimentally stupid and I don't want to be like this anymore. And the quick and easy answer is, well, pop on a circlet, pop on a headband of vast intelligence and suddenly become way smarter. Well, for a fighter, is that the mechanically best thing that he couldn't do. No, there are better headband slots mechanically, but he's playing as a real human being, a real character that's living in this world that wants to better himself, not just as a killing machine, but as a human. He wants to, be a more a warrior poet than merely a warrior, right? Something to think about. And it bumps all of his skills. It makes him a lot better out of combat, which in a tabletop role-playing game, I would argue should be the vast majority of your games. Combat should be very important and it should be fun and engaging, but it shouldn't be the main thing that you're doing. Barring some like weird, one shot, it's something. Yeah, but living as a fisherman, that's no living. That's a poor living. The important caveat there. Never mind. I won't make the joke.
Obviously, dump stats to a certain extent are unavoidable. The goal is not perfect balance. That's impossible. But again, I think this is a difference in sort of approach, not end goal. I think that Tim and I both want the player to have a huge amount of options. We want those to be fun. You can't achieve fun on paper. You got to play it. So even if you start my way, which is really trying to balance it on paper, if you don't play it a ton and try to really work through all those classes and all those combinations and everything and listen to feedback, it's not going to get there. So yeah, I don't know if I have anything more to say than that, but I did want to say that I think they're kind of the same thing. It is kind of like, if you think about it, Reservoir Dogs is the greatest movie of all time versus Reservoir Dogs is fucking awesome. Thank you.
So I think that's pretty good. That's it's interesting that he tackles that idea as well. It's having a fun variety of options and having balance, basically the same thing. Difference in intent, not difference in outcome necessarily. And I don't think necessarily it is trying to achieve the same thing. Yes, the egg did make an appearance there in our YouTube suggestions. I mean, Josh Sawyer's awesome. Go check his channel out if you are one of the guys that knows me and not him by chance. I do think though there's an aspect there that's missing of acting as your character in the world and what your character would do versus knowing as a player, this is the mechanical build I want to achieve. I think those are two different things, right? And I will always say that a lot of times we as human beings control our build. I'm not against having a character build, right? That's something where I will push back a lot on the 4D guys of like, oh, I don't want to build a character. I don't want to do it. Okay, so you didn't go to school or training to do this. You didn't start learning about whatever field you're in to get better as a CNC machinist or as an IT tech. No, you did. You made a build. You just aren't thinking about it. You aren't thinking about those those words, right? But I mean, think about all a build is it's the training and specialization that you go through to achieve a certain thing in life, right? It's nothing more than that. It's not some fantastical thing that only exists within the game world, right? Or outside of the game world and mechanically, right? So I'm not against that, but I think there is a thing missing there, right? Of the cultural and technological things that exist in the world that would lead to somebody developing something suboptimal or just totally different, right? Motivations, right? Yeah. Character motivations. That's something that's missing here because a character motivation can get you to build your character in a totally different way, even if it's objectively worse on paper. Like you said, fun doesn't happen on paper. And I think a lot of times balance can happen on paper, but it's not taking into account a lot of those messy social things that make role-playing fun compared to other games. that separate role playing from the card game, right? From the board game. One solution would be sacrificing control of character motivation, but I don't love that either. Sacrificing character GM or dice roll chooses, but I don't love that either. Yeah, I suppose so. What's your opinion on tying character advancement to those sorts of issues? Fighter gains strength by accomplishing a goal of shoring up his weaknesses. The problem is folks just pick optimal motivations. I think I need to spend some time thinking about that one. I don't know if I have an immediate answer on that. Tying character advancement to gain strength by Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. I play tested for Pathfinder Second Edition, not as much as I play tested for Wizards of the Coast, but I showed up to a couple play tests for Paizo since they did their play testing. Pretty much open door. You just had to show up to their conventions and show up to good old Paizo HQ, go run a couple play tests, and they never fixed the issue of they wanted to make the casters really feel like casters and the fighters really feel like fighters. And it made it so that the cleric was just a heal bot, right? The goblin is taking away exactly 10 to 15 HP every turn. The cleric is healing exactly 10 to 15 HP every turn. And you just do this back and forth until one of you runs out of resources. They're up in Washington. I can't remember if they're up in not Bremerton. I don't know why I'm thinking Bremerton, but they're up in Washington State near the Seattle area. I think there's a ton of recency bias in all things. People don't want to put the hammer on the new shiny thing for whatever reason. There's a lot of toxic positivity in this community. Not this particular community, but in the RPG community at large. Shauner would have always said, "Oh, it's just the RPG community. We're not all the same. Why are we calling it one whole community? Like the baseball community? What? No, that's not a thing." But you know what I mean. Whenever a new thing comes out, people are awed by the shiny artwork, and some of the Pathfinder 2 artwork is phenomenal, barring questionable looking purple-haired dwarves. But let's not get into that. But there's some really gorgeous artwork. There's some ideas that I like on paper, but like the nerfs to teleportation are fantastic. It makes the world function much better when you can't just go, oh, well, the guy's running away and he's in like a totally different country. Well, I'm just gonna open a map to that. Okay, we're there. Problem solved. And it's like, God damn it. Okay, it creates a lot of problems for the way the world works. To roleplay in a game, all you need is a goal for the moment. As a character, a higher motivation is good, but it's useless without minor goals. Yeah. I need to be able to pay my rent for the next week so I'm not homeless. Now I'm homeless. Okay, I need to be able to pay for food so that I don't starve. Just Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That'll get you a long way, right? You're going to hate me for saying this, but some of the most interesting class design comes out of Stone Top, a PBTA game, but the system is terrible. Yeah, I don't hate you for saying that. I've read through like Masks, just, Apocalypse World, and there are some really cool class designs, some really cool playbook designs, as they call them, but it's the actual system that's the problem. That's my bugbear with it. Don't sue Mr. Game Exec. Yeah. Goal equals what's your problem? Yeah. It's a great way to put it, right? So thinking about those sorts of things, that's going to skew balance, right? That's going to skew maybe my fighter has some skills at stealing, not because he wants to down the line be a big thief, but because he had to steal to get by early on in the game. And then now that he has the money for all the nice kit, now he's going to be a fighter. And that plays back, first time he picks a lock on something, one of the other characters goes, "Where did you learn to do that?" And I'd rather not talk about it. Or maybe he does. Maybe he's fully open about it. Whatever. All these sorts of little things that you sprinkle around here. We didn't have to write some 100-page backstory. It's something we just thought of immediately off the top of our heads. Yeah. So, and Josh Sawyer said, at the beginning, he's like, I think Tim Kaine might just be way more creative than me. I'm not sure that's the case. I think, look at Fallout New Vegas, man. It's a phenomenal game. Look at Fallout 1 and 2. They're also phenomenal games. They're both absolutely fantastic game designers. And that lends his point a lot of credence. Maybe the intent doesn't matter so much. It's what you end up with. Well, guys, I'm about to go on a date with the wife. I've got probably a few more minutes here, though, so throw any of your questions up. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know thoughts on future bids you'd like to make. Anything else after this? This is very much impromptu. Finally, Orb says that would be cool in a life path character creation like Traveler, where you pick a skill from a different class and justify it narratively. Yeah, I like backgrounds, background systems, things like Traveler. Things like the funnel in Dungeon Crawl Classics. I think those are cool character building things, so you don't have to just shotgun something onto your 11-page backstory. Are you in any ongoing campaigns? I am, so I'm running the Pathfinder campaign. I'm trying to get scheduling back on that. But is life too busy? Life is largely too busy, tragically. I am soon, trademark, going to be running my in-person Pathfinder game. Like I said, I started a campaign for that a little while ago with my longtime friends. But the Saturdays have just not been working for us for whatever reason, and then weekdays are tricky too. So, the days that I'm free to actually play games are getting narrower and narrower. My wife and I both work long 12-hour shifts, so I've got a lot of time in the day. It's just, hey, who wants to play a game at 2 a.m. Central Standard Time? So yeah, the scheduling has just been nightmarish. But yeah, so no recent sessions, unfortunately. I'd love to have some. Thanks, Grognard guy. Thanks, Pun of the Orb. Top 3 systems. Love the live. I mean, Pathfinder First Edition, obviously. Love it. I've spent a lot of work and time making it more role playable, hopefully. It just gives you so many options. It's got a very robust core system to do basically anything you want to do as far as the medieval, Renaissance, early industrial. It's got rules for World War One. It's got some great Bronze Age Egyptian stuff. It's phenomenal. You want to play it lower to mid fantasy, just play the first 3 levels. You want to play it more high fantasy, keep it going. There's so many different ways that you can keep playing it and not run out of things without it feeling generic either. Everything feels very curated. Everything feels very different. I'll try to. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. And I'll try to maybe point out when I'm doing a live stream. You may hear my voice still a little different here, and it's not because of the microphone. It's because I've just gotten over the flu. So I planned on making some videos last week and couldn't speak. So so that wasn't great. Top 3 after Pathfinder First Edition, though. I was a big fan of Shadowrun 5th Edition. I love Shadowrun. It's such a cool universe and world. The system is just so clunky and messy that, I can't remember what somebody is. I don't remember what game it was said about, but somebody in the Discord said, I love this. It sucks. That's how I feel. All of my top 3 that you're going to hear that. Pathfinder First Edition, I love it. It's got stuff that sucks about it. Shadowrun 5th Edition, I love it. It sucks. the most we have like laughed about character creation in my home group was in Shadowrun 5th edition. And it was just imagining a scenario where it was like, oh, I'm going to play an awakened animal, like an animal that suddenly gained sentience when the surge happened. And I'm going to be a snake, and we're going to be like he thinks of himself as like the reincarnation of Jormungandr, the World Eater. I was like, that's super cool idea. And he's like, he sees the entry for industrial lubricant. He's like, dude, a boa constrictor with industrial lubricant. How are the cops gonna get him? Yeah, handcuff this. And it's just and it was like 2 a.m, so we're all sleeping. We're all tired as hell. We could not stop laughing. It was, oh my god! And the years later, we still think about that character. Oh man. And he had like one of the things he chose for his like living arrangements was that he's a snake. He can't really afford like stuff. He's not considered a citizen. He doesn't have a sin or anything. So he has to have a roommate that covers for him, and he's got like a pathetic like non-traditional like 40-year-old university student roommate. And god, it was a funny comedy of errors. That was really fun. Uh, Other than that, what would be my number 3? Hmm. There's a lot of systems I like on paper, but I haven't actually played, so I can't put them as my number 3, right? Because I haven't actually played them. Of games I've actually played, that is a struggle for me. Hmm. I need to get into Mithras. All right, liking crunchy, in-depth games means there's a lot of difficulty in the breadth, right? When you spend so much time learning Pathfinder, learning Shadowrun, it means there's a lot of games I've looked at, haven't played, haven't read into too much that I'm sure I would love, but I just haven't. I only have so many hours on this planet. I guess my third would probably be Godlike, mainly from a setting perspective and from a mechanical perspective. It does something really unique that I haven't really seen in any other games. I enjoyed what we played of it. If you don't know Godlike, it's an ore game, the one roll engine. So it's a D10 pool system where you take the highest numerated set. So, for example, if you rolled a pair of 10s, that would be your set. The number shown indicates how well you do the task. Simple enough. How many matches you have, so the width of the set determines how fast you do it. So, if you have 7 2s, you might beat a guy who had 2 10s in a 100-meter dash. But you're going to be absolutely exhausted at the end of that 100-meter dash. Maybe you even trip and fall over at the end of it. Whereas the guy that had 2 10s, he lost in it, but he's absolutely fine. He's ready to go another 100 meters. He's ready to man the machine gun. He's ready to hop the tank, whatever at the end of it. So I really like the games that accomplish multiple things with one die roll. The interpretation was always the problem. I think if I had more hours in it and you could get quick at doing that, it'd be very compelling. And superhero World War II, man, that is a cool that's a cool concept. Playing it a little more grounded than Captain America 2, man, that's cool. I like that. That was really fun, and it's you also get some of the alt history too because it keeps going into 1946, so you can play with all the cool tank and plane designs like the X5F flying flapjack. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool ideas. You can play like what ifs, getting into fighting in areas that fighting never happened in. So like more fighting in China. Yeah. I like that setting. I don't know if I'd play it in the same game, but I really like Godlike for the setting. It's cool. Yeah, there's others out there, but if I had to get a top 3, that's probably it. I gotta make a vid tackling how I'd handle zombification in an RPG. Oh man. I'll think about it. I know it's less crunchy than Pathfinder 1. There's a lot of things that are less crunchy than Pathfinder 1. All right. Okay. Good questions, guys. Thank you. Thank you guys for swinging on by. I'm going to end the stream now. Always great questions. Always great talking to you. And always great videos from Josh Sawyer. If you didn't know about him, check him out. He's making more videos these days. Really great insight to a lot of fantastic video games. And he's talking about tabletop games now, too. Very cool. Looking forward to see more of it. I'll see you guys.